Welcome to Hidden Lives, where the people we overlook every day carry stories that can change the world. Today's story is about a man who cleaned floors for a living but possessed a gift that would bring hundreds to tears. If this moves you, stay until the end, because what happens in the final moments will restore your faith in second chances. James Rivera pushed his cleaning cart through the empty corridors of the Sterling Financial Tower in downtown Boston every night at exactly 9 o'clock. For 7 years, he had followed the same routine with quiet precision. Vacuum the carpets on floors 12 through 18, empty the recycling bins in the break rooms, wipe down the conference tables where executives made decisions worth millions, polish the glass doors until they gleamed under the fluorescent lights. To the hundreds of people who worked in that 40-story building, James was functionally invisible. They passed him in hallways without making eye contact. They held elevator doors for him out of politeness, not recognition. If anyone had been asked his name, most would have guessed wrong or admitted they had never thought to ask. He was simply the night custodian, a fixture as impersonal as the potted plants in the lobby or the abstract art hanging in the corridors. But James carried within him something extraordinary that nobody in that building could have imagined. Before circumstances reshaped his world, before tragedy forced him to choose survival over dreams, James had been a concert pianist, not an amateur who played at parties, not a hobbyist who entertained at family gatherings, a trained, classically educated musician who had studied at the New England Conservatory and performed with regional orchestras throughout Massachusetts. His fingers had once flown across keys in packed concert halls. His interpretations of Chopin and Rachmaninoff had earned him standing ovations. Music critics had written that his playing possessed uncommon emotional depth and technical brilliance tempered with soul. A promising career had stretched before him like an open road leading toward everything he had ever wanted. Then in one terrible night, everything shattered. James's wife, Carmen, died from complications during the birth of their daughter, Sophia. In the space of a few hours, James became both a father and a widower. He held his newborn daughter in the same hospital where his wife had just been pronounced dead, and the contradiction nearly destroyed him. Joy and devastation occupied the same moment, the same room, the same broken heart. Music became impossible after that. Every piece he had ever played reminded him of Carmen. She had been his biggest supporter, sitting in audiences, believing in him when he doubted himself. The piano that had once been his voice became a monument to loss. He couldn't touch the keys without feeling her absence, like a physical weight pressing on his chest. So James made the hardest decision of his life. He sold his beloved Steinway grand piano to pay for Carmen's funeral and the mountain of medical bills. He withdrew from the conservatory. He took the first stable job he could find that offered health insurance and regular hours. Night custodial work at a corporate tower. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. It paid the rent. It let him be home during the day to raise Sophia. 7 years passed in a blur of routine and responsibility. Sophia grew from infant to toddler to a bright 7-year-old who loved to draw and ask endless questions. She knew her father worked at night cleaning offices, but she had no idea that he had once played piano on stages. James had removed every trace of his musical past from their small apartment. No recordings, no sheet music, no photographs of him in concert attire. He wanted to protect her from his pain, but in doing so, he had also hidden his gift. The only hint of his former life was a small, worn photograph tucked in his wallet. James at 25, sitting at a piano, smiling, with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was supposed to be. Sometimes, late at night, when Sophia was asleep, he would look at that photograph and wonder if that person still existed somewhere inside him. The moment that would change everything began on a cold Friday evening in December. Sterling Financial had organized an elaborate holiday gala in the building's grand atrium, to celebrate the company's 50th anniversary. The event was massive. Over 300 employees, investors, board members, and their guests, all dressed in formal evening wear. A professional string quartet provided background music. Champagne fountains sparkled under crystal chandeliers. And positioned prominently in the center of the marble floor stood a magnificent concert grand piano, rented specifically for the occasion and left untouched, purely decorative. James had been scheduled to work that night, but his supervisor had asked him to stay out of sight until the party ended. So he waited in a maintenance room on the lower level, checking his watch, knowing he had hours of cleanup ahead of him once the guests finally left. Around 11 o'clock, James received an unexpected text from his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who was watching Sophia. The message was brief. "Sophia has a high fever. You should come home." Panic shot through him. He immediately called his supervisor to explain the emergency. His boss was sympathetic but firm. Someone needed to at least make a quick pass through the atrium to empty trash bins before the night crew arrived at midnight. James had 30 minutes. He grabbed his cart and took the service elevator to the main floor. When the doors opened, he was surprised to find the party still in full swing. Music played. People laughed. Glasses clinked. James moved along the perimeter of the room as quickly as possible, trying to remain invisible, thinking only of getting home to Sophia. That's when disaster struck. As James maneuvered his cart near the piano, one of the wheels caught on an uneven seam in the marble floor. The cart tipped, trash bags tumbled out, empty champagne bottles clattered across the floor. The room fell silent. Every head turned toward the sound. James froze, mortified, as 300 pairs of eyes focused on him. A man in an expensive suit, Jonathan Sterling himself, the company's CEO, walked over. His face was unreadable. "That's quite an entrance," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room. A few people laughed nervously. James began apologizing, kneeling to gather the spilled trash, his face burning with humiliation. Then Sterling noticed something. James's hands, despite being calloused from years of manual labor, moved with unusual grace and precision as he collected the scattered bottles. There was something refined about the way he carried himself, even in his embarrassment. "Wait," Sterling said, studying James more carefully. "You play piano, don't you?" The question hung in the air. James looked up, confused. "I used to. A long time ago." Sterling's eyes brightened with interest. "The piano over there has been sitting unused all evening. Everyone's been too intimidated to touch it. Would you play something for us? Just one piece?" James's heart hammered in his chest. "Sir, I really need to get home. My daughter is sick and I—" "5 minutes," Sterling interrupted gently. "Play for 5 minutes and I'll personally drive you home. My car is right outside. You'll get there faster than waiting for the subway." James looked at the piano. 7 years. 7 years since his fingers had touched keys. But Sophia needed him, and 5 minutes for a guaranteed ride home was worth it. He walked slowly to the piano bench and sat down. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone sensed they were about to witness something unexpected. James placed his hands on the keys. They trembled slightly. Then he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. He chose Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, third movement. It was a piece that required extraordinary technical skill, one he had performed dozens of times in his previous life. His fingers remembered. Despite 7 years of pushing mops and emptying trash cans, despite exhaustion and heartbreak and buried dreams, his hands remembered. The music exploded from the piano like a dam breaking. Notes cascaded in furious, passionate waves. James's hands flew across the keys with stunning speed and precision. The piece demanded everything: power, delicacy, perfect timing, emotional depth. And James gave it everything. He played not just with his fingers, but with 7 years of suppressed grief, 7 years of sacrificed dreams, 7 years of love for a daughter who needed him to be more than his sorrow. The room was transfixed. People set down their drinks. Conversations died. Some of the guests had heard this piece performed by world-class pianists in concert halls. What they were witnessing now matched or exceeded anything they had experienced. This wasn't a custodian playing a party trick. This was a master revealing himself. When James played the final, thunderous chord, his hands remained on the keys for a moment, shaking, then silence, complete, breathless silence. He opened his eyes, suddenly remembering where he was, who he was, what he had just done. Then the applause began. It started with one person and spread like wildfire until the entire room was on its feet, clapping, cheering, some people openly crying. Jonathan Sterling stood nearest to the piano, his face showing genuine awe. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. James stood, overwhelmed. I'm just the custodian, but I need to get home to my daughter." Sterling nodded, placing a hand on James's shoulder. "Let's get you home. But this conversation isn't over." True to his word, Sterling drove James home in his personal car. During the 15-minute drive, James explained everything: the conservatory, Carmen's death, the choice between music and survival. Sterling listened without interruption. When they arrived at James's modest apartment building, Sterling handed him a business card. "Come see me Monday morning. Bring your daughter if the neighbor can't watch her. We need to talk about your future." That weekend, someone who had been at the party posted a video online. They had recorded James's entire performance on their phone. The caption read, "Night custodian at corporate event turns out to be a concert pianist. Nobody saw this coming." By Monday morning, the video had been viewed 8 million times. James's life transformed rapidly after that. Sterling Financial established a scholarship fund in Carmen's name and hired James as the company's Director of Community Arts Programs, a newly created position that paid 3 times his custodial salary. The role involved organizing free music education programs for underprivileged children throughout Boston. But more importantly, James began playing again. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The pain hadn't disappeared, but music was no longer a reminder of loss. It had become a bridge between who he had been and who he could still be. 6 months later, James gave his first public recital in 7 years, a benefit concert for the scholarship fund. Sophia sat in the front row, finally understanding what her father had sacrificed for her. She was old enough now to comprehend the gift she had been given, a parent who had chosen her over his dreams and had somehow, miraculously, found a way back to both. As James took his bow to thunderous applause, he looked at his daughter and smiled. The road had been longer and harder than he ever imagined, but he had arrived at a truth that mattered. Talent can sleep, but it never truly dies. It waits, patient and faithful, for the moment when life finally gives permission to wake up. This is Hidden Lives, where ordinary people reveal their extraordinary truths. Because the person you pass without noticing might be carrying a gift that could change your world, if you just take a moment to see them.